The impact sent Cade Voss tumbling through the canopy like a rag doll, branches slapping his face as his escape pod plummeted toward Verity's Prime's unforgiving surface. When he finally crashed into the undergrowth, the world exploded in a shower of bioluminescent spores and angry chittering. "Status report," he croaked into his comm, knowing full well the answer. Static buzzed back. The electromagnetic interference on this moon made long-range communication impossible, and his pod's distress beacon was buried somewhere in the twisted wreckage behind him. Cade checked his suit's integrity, intact, thanked the stars, and took stock of his supplies. 3 days of water, emergency rations, basic medical kit, and his sidearm. Not nearly enough for the 2 weeks it would take for the colony ship to arrive at his last known coordinates. The jungle pressed in from all sides, a living wall of violet trees and predatory vines. Every step brought new dangers: thorns that secreted neurotoxins, flowers that screamed when disturbed, and the constant feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. He'd been hiking for hours when he heard it, a sound too rhythmic to be natural. Breathing, labored and irregular, coming from behind a cluster of crystalline formations that hummed with internal energy. Cade drew his weapon, every instinct screaming ambush. Pirates used this route to smuggle illegal tech through the sector, but when he crept around the outcropping, weapon raised, what he found made him lower it immediately. A woman lay curled beneath the overhanging crystal, her body a patchwork of bruises and cuts. Her skin had an iridescent quality that caught the alien sunlight, and her hair fell in waves of silver and blue. She wore the remnants of what had once been an elegant garment, now torn and stained with purple blood. She looked up at his approach, and her eyes, like storms captured in glass, went wide with terror. She scrambled backward, a sound somewhere between a gasp and a growl escaping her throat. "Easy," Cade said, holstering his weapon and raising his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." She continued to back away until the crystal stopped her retreat. Her chest heaved, and Cade noticed the deep gash across her ribs, still bleeding sluggishly. "You're hurt," he said, pulling out his medical kit. "Let me help." When she shook her head violently, he sat down several feet away, making himself less threatening. The jungle's ambient noise filled the silence, the rustle of unseen creatures, the whisper of wind through crystalline leaves, the distant roar of something large and predatory. "I crashed," he explained, gesturing toward the smoke still rising in the distance. "My name is Cade. I'm a scout for the United Colonies. Are you? Are you alone out here?" Her eyes darted to his medical kit, then back to his face. She seemed to weigh his words, his intentions. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Ayla," she whispered, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. The word seemed foreign on her tongue, as if she were testing it for the first time. "Ayla," Cade repeated, offering a gentle smile. "It's nice to meet you, even under these circumstances. Will you let me take a look at that wound?" She hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the crystal behind her. The formation pulsed faintly in response, as if recognizing her touch. Strange, but this planet was full of oddities. Finally, she nodded again, and Cade inched closer with his medical scanner. As the device beeped softly, taking readings, he noticed her studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. There was something ancient in her gaze, something that spoke of secrets and sorrows too vast for words. "The readings are interesting," he murmured, frowning at the scanner. Her physiology was similar to human, but with fascinating variations. "Your body temperature is lower than ours, and your cellular structure. Well, it's unlike anything I've seen." Her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "Please," she said, her voice barely audible. "They cannot find me here." "Who?" Cade asked, but she only shook her head, releasing him. As night fell, the jungle transformed. Bioluminescent plants awakened, casting everything in an ethereal glow. Nocturnal predators announced their presence with howls that chilled the blood. Cade helped Ayla to a more sheltered spot among the crystal formations, which seemed to dampen sound and mask heat signatures. "We should both rest," he said, offering her half of his rations. She accepted them gracefully, her fingers brushing his in a way that sent unexpected warmth through his entire body. As they ate in companionable silence, Cade found himself stealing glances at her. Even injured and exhausted, there was a regal bearing to her movements, a grace that spoke of nobility. Who was she? What was she doing alone on this hostile world? When sleep finally claimed them, they lay on opposite sides of their small shelter. But sometime in the night, as the temperature dropped and alien winds howled above the canopy, Cade woke to find Ayla pressed against his side, seeking warmth. Her breathing was deep and even, her body fitting against his as if they'd done this countless times before. He should have moved away, maintained proper boundaries. But something about the way she trusted him, the vulnerability she showed in sleep, made him stay. As he drifted back to sleep, one arm instinctively curling around her to keep her warm, Cade had no idea that he'd just made the most important decision of his life. Outside their shelter, something inhuman screamed in the distance, but for the first time since crashing, Cade felt no fear. Whatever dangers Verity's Prime held, whatever secrets Ayla carried, they would face them together. Even if it killed them both. Dawn came too soon, announced by the piercing call of creatures Cade had never seen. He woke to find Ayla already awake, studying him with those storm-glass eyes. A flush crept up his neck as he realized his arm was still wrapped around her waist. "Sorry," he muttered, starting to pull away, but her hand covered his. "Don't," she said softly. The warmth was welcome. They shared a moment of charged silence before the jungle reminded them of their predicament. A bone-chilling howl echoed from too close, followed by the sound of something massive crashing through the undergrowth. "We need to move," Cade said, gathering their supplies. "Can you travel?" Ayla's wound had closed overnight, impossibly fast, but Cade didn't question it. There was too much about this world he didn't understand. She moved with surprising grace, leading him through paths he would never have found alone. "You know this terrain," he observed, watching her navigate around a patch of ground that looked solid but clearly wasn't. "I've survived here for 3 cycles," she replied, then caught herself. 3 weeks in your measure." 3 weeks alone? Cade was impressed and concerned. "Where were you trying to go?" She stopped, turning to face him. The morning light caught her features, highlighting the aristocratic line of her jaw, the elegant sweep of her collarbone. "Away," she said simply. Before he could press further, the ground beneath them trembled. Ayla grabbed his hand, pulling him behind a massive tree just as the foliage exploded 20 feet away. A creature the size of a transport shuttle emerged, all scales and teeth and too many eyes. A Veridian stalker, one of the apex predators his briefing had warned about. Ayla pressed against him, their bodies flush from chest to hip. He could feel her heartbeat, stronger and faster than a human's, against his chest. Their faces were inches apart, and for a moment the danger faded away. "Stay absolutely still," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "They hunt by vibration." The creature prowled closer, its massive head swinging side to side. Cade's grip tightened on Ayla, and she responded by wrapping one leg around his thigh, bringing them even closer. Whether it was tactical positioning or something more, he couldn't tell. Their bodies fit together perfectly, and heat built between them despite the mortal danger. Long minutes passed before the creature finally moved away. When Ayla finally relaxed against him, he became acutely aware of how her curves pressed against his body, how her fingers had somehow wound into his hair. "That was close," he managed, though he wasn't sure if he meant the creature or the way she was looking at him. "Too close," she agreed, but she didn't step back. Instead, her thumb traced the line of his jaw. "You're brave, Cade Voss, most would have run. And leave you, not a chance." Something shifted in her expression, surprise, perhaps, or gratitude. She leaned up, and for a heart-stopping moment, he thought she might kiss him. Instead, she placed her lips gently against his cheek. "Thank you." The rest of the day passed in a blur of close calls and growing intimacy. Ayla showed him how to find water in the hollow crystalline fruits, how to avoid the carnivorous vines, how to read the subtle signs that warned of territorial predators. In return, Cade shared his rations, tended to her healing wound with gentle hands that lingered longer than strictly necessary, and used his thermal blanket to create a shelter when the afternoon rains came. They huddled together under the makeshift tent, watching the purple rain cascade down in sheets. The air was thick with moisture and something else: tension, attraction, possibility. "Tell me about your home," Ayla said, settling more comfortably against his side. "Which one, Earth? The colony ships, the frontier stations?" Cade asked, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She felt right there, like she belonged. "All of them. I want to know everything about you." So he told her about growing up in the underground cities of Mars, about his first glimpse of open sky, about joining the Colonial Survey Corps to see what lay beyond the known systems. She listened with rapt attention, her head pillowed on his shoulder, occasionally tracing idle patterns on his chest. "Your turn," he said when he'd run out of stories. "Tell me about your home." A shadow passed over her face. "My home is gone, has been for some time." "I'm sorry," he tightened his embrace. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not yet," she murmured. "For now, this is enough." This, her warmth against him, the rhythmic fall of rain, the gradual building of something deeper than mere survival partnership, was more than enough. When the rain finally stopped, neither of them moved immediately. Ayla traced patterns on his chest, her touch sending sparks through his nervous system. When she looked up at him, her eyes held a question. "We should go," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Should we?" His hand found her cheek, thumb stroking the impossibly soft skin. "The jungle is dangerous at night." "It's dangerous during the day, too." She laughed, a sound like silver bells. "True." The moment stretched between them, heavy with promise. Then, as if making a decision, Ayla pushed herself up on her palms, bringing her face level with his. "Cade," she whispered. "Yes. Kiss me." He didn't need to be asked twice. The first touch of their lips was soft, tentative, but it quickly deepened into something hungry and desperate. She tasted like the alien fruit they'd shared, sweet with an edge of something wild. Her hands tangled in his hair as he pulled her closer, and suddenly the danger outside their shelter seemed very far away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ayla rested her forehead against his. "We're playing with fire," she whispered. "I've never been afraid of getting burned," he replied, pressing another kiss to her lips. They held each other as night fell, the jungle around them alive with sounds both beautiful and terrifying. But inside their small shelter, wrapped in each other's arms, they found a peace neither had expected. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new challenges, but tonight they had each other, and for now that was all the survival they needed. The attack came at dawn. Cade woke to Ayla's hand over his mouth and the sound of heavy boots surrounding their shelter. Through the gaps in their cover, he could see armored figures moving with military precision. "Mining Guild," Ayla whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They're hunting me." "You're worth that much to them?" Cade reached for his sidearm. "More than you can imagine," she caught his hand. "Let me handle this." Before he could stop her, she was on her feet and out of the shelter. Cade watched in stunned silence as she approached the lead soldier, her bearing suddenly transformed. Gone was the vulnerable woman he'd been protecting. In her place stood someone who commanded attention without saying a word. "Stand down," she said, her voice carrying an authority that made even the hardened mercenaries pause. The lead soldier lowered his weapon slightly. "Your Majesty, we thought." "You thought wrong," her voice turned cold. "Withdraw immediately, that's an order." Cade's world tilted. "Majesty?" His mind raced as the soldiers retreated, clearly confused but unwilling to disobey. When Ayla returned to their shelter, she found him staring at her. "Your royalty," he said flatly. "I was going to tell you." "When, after we," he gestured helplessly between them. "What else haven't you told me?" She sat beside him, suddenly looking small again. "Everything, nothing, I don't know where to start." "Try the beginning." So she did. The story poured out of her. How she was queen of the Salathi Empire, how her trusted advisor had orchestrated a coup, how she'd escaped in a stolen ship only to crash on Verides Prime. The mining guild soldiers were part of the bounty hunting operation, but they'd recognized her despite her disguise. "The coup was 13 cycles ago," she finished. "I've been running ever since." Cade ran a hand through his hair, trying to process. "You're telling me I've been kissing royalty?" A small smile played at her lips. "You've been kissing a fugitive." "Same thing, apparently." He studied her face, seeing her anew. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because for the first time in cycles, someone looked at me and didn't see a crown or a political advantage. You saw me, Cade, just me." The vulnerability in her voice broke through his shock. Here was the woman who had trembled in his arms last night, who had shared her warmth and her fears. That was real, crown or no crown. "Does this change things?" she asked softly. In answer, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her deeply. When they parted, both were breathless. "The only thing that changes," he said, "is that now I know why you carry yourself like you own the stars." Relief flooded her features. I don't own them, but I would share them with you. This time when they kissed, it was with a new understanding, a new hunger. Cade pulled her into his lap, and she came willingly, her legs straddling his thighs. Her hands worked at the fastenings of his suit while his found the remnants of her torn garment. Are you sure? He asked against her throat. I've never been more sure of anything. They undressed each other slowly, learning the landscape of skin and muscle, freckle and scar. When Cade traced the silver lines that marked Ayla's ribs, royal markings, she explained between kisses. She arched against him with a sound that drove all coherent thought from his mind. They made love in the shelter of crystalline formations, the jungle's morning chorus providing a primal soundtrack. Ayla moved above him like a force of nature, her hair falling around them like a curtain, her eyes never leaving his. When she cried out his name, it sounded like a prayer and a command all at once. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin. Cade traced lazy patterns on her back while she pressed kisses to his chest. I've run from my throne for so long, she murmured. I forgot what it felt like to run toward something instead. What are you running toward now? She looked up at him, her storm-glass eyes serious. Whatever happens next, I want you with me. Before he could respond, his comm unit crackled to life. They'd moved closer to the extraction point, and it had finally picked up the colony ship's signal. Voss here, he reported, trying to keep his voice steady while Ayla traced circles on his chest. Cade, thank the stars, we've been trying to reach you for days. Are you injured? The pod's beacon went dark. I'm fine, but I'm not alone, he met Ayla's eyes. I found someone, she needs passage off-world. A pause, understood. We'll be in range for pickup in 36 hours. Send coordinates. Cade relayed their position and ended the call. 36 hours, long enough for things to get complicated. Your people will help me reach neutral space? Ayla asked. My people will do whatever I ask them to do. He pulled her up for another kiss. But first, we need to survive until pickup. Together. They spent the rest of the day reinforcing their shelter and planning their route to the extraction point. But they also stole moments for themselves, kisses against tree trunks, hands holding hands as they walked, meaningful glances that promised more to come. As the second sun set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, they settled into their shelter once more. This time there was no hesitation, no question of propriety. Ayla fit against him like she'd been made for it, her head on his chest, their legs intertwined. Cade. Yeah. I'm glad you crashed. He laughed, pressing a kiss to her hair. Me too. Though remind me to recommend Verity's Prime for honeymoon destinations. Nothing says romance like mortal peril. She went still against him. Honeymoon. Eventually, he said, his heart racing, if you'll have a lowly colonial scout. There's nothing lowly about you. She pushed up on her elbows to look at him. And yes, to everything, to anything, yes. Their kiss tasted like promise and possibility, like a future neither had dared to imagine. Outside, something howled in the night, but inside their shelter, wrapped in each other's arms, Cade and Ayla had found the one thing worth more than all the crowns in the galaxy. Each other. They were 3 hours from the extraction point when the hunting party found them. Cade heard them first, the low hum of hover engines, the sharp crack of iron rifles charging. He and Ayla were crossing a clearing, hand in hand, when the first shot sizzled past his ear. Run, he shouted, pulling her toward the tree line. They sprinted through the undergrowth, branches whipping at their faces. Ayla moved with inhuman grace, using her knowledge of the terrain to find paths where none seemed to exist. But their pursuers were relentless and better equipped. This way, Ayla gasped, veering left toward a series of ravines. There's a cave network, we can lose them. They slid down the embankment just as an explosion rocked the ground above them. Someone was using heavy ordnance now. This wasn't about taking Ayla alive anymore. This was about making sure she never reached the extraction point. The cave system was a maze of tunnels and chambers, many filled with crystalline formations that provided natural barriers. They ran deeper, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. Finally, Ayla pulled him into a chamber with a narrow opening, too small for men in armor to follow easily. We can hold here, Cade said, checking his weapon. How many more power cells do you have? Cade, Ayla said softly, we need to talk. Can it wait, in case you haven't noticed? No, her voice was firm. If we don't make it out, you need to know something. He turned to look at her fully. Even after days on the run, even dirty and exhausted, she was beautiful. More than beautiful, she was everything he hadn't known he was searching for. Don't talk like that, he said. We're going to make it. Listen to me. She took his hands in hers. The coup, it wasn't just about power. My advisor discovered something, a weapons cache that could destabilize the entire sector. I have the coordinates burned into my genetic code. That's why they need me alive or dead if they can't capture me. Ayla, I love you, she interrupted, the words tumbling out in a rush. I know it's only been days, but I've lived whole lives in these days with you. When you crashed into my world, you brought light back into it. And if we only have minutes. He silenced her with a kiss, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. We have more than minutes, he promised. We have a lifetime ahead of us, but right now, he glanced toward the entrance as voices grew louder. We need to focus on survival. The next few minutes were a blur of gunfire and chaos. Cade's military training kicked in as they held their position, using the crystal formations as cover. Ayla fought beside him with a determination that reminded him she'd ruled an empire. She knew how to fight for what was hers. During a lull in the fighting, she grabbed his face in her hands. No matter what happens. Nothing's going to happen, he cut her off. But even as he said it, he heard the distinctive whine of a plasma charge building. Someone had brought a cave buster. Without warning, Ayla threw herself at him, knocking them both back just as the explosion rocked the chamber. The entrance collapsed in a rain of crystal and stone, but not before a massive chunk struck Ayla in the shoulder. No, Cade caught her as she fell, blood flowing freely from the wound. The back passage, she gasped, pointing with her uninjured arm. Go. Not without you. Cade, please. I said no. He lifted her as gently as he could, ignoring her protests. We finish this together or not at all. They stumbled through the darkness, guided by her whispered directions and the faint glow of luminescent fungus. Behind them, he could hear their pursuers blasting through the cave-in. When they finally emerged on the far side of the mountain, the extraction point was visible in the distance, a clearing where the colony ship would set down. They were close, so close. But Ayla was flagging, her blood loss catching up with her. Cade set her down near a cluster of rocks, checking her wound. It was bad, probably fatal without immediate medical attention. Go, she whispered. Get to your ship. Warn them about the weapons cache. Ayla, look at me. When she did, he saw resignation in her storm-glass eyes. I'm not leaving you ever, do you understand? She smiled weakly, even if I might die. Especially then, he gathered her in his arms. Because you're not dying, I won't let you. As if the universe had heard him, a familiar sound filled the air, the deep throb of colonial ship engines. They were early. But so were their pursuers. The valley erupted in gunfire as the colony ship descended, its defensive systems engaging the hunting party. Medical personnel in full armor poured from the hatches, laying down covering fire as they advanced toward Cade and Ayla's position. Medic, Cade shouted, waving them over. She's critical. As they worked on Ayla, strapping her to a gurney, she reached for his hand. Don't leave me, she whispered. Never again, he promised, keeping pace with the medical team as they rushed her toward the ship. You're stuck with me now, Your Majesty. She laughed, a sound like winter bells in summer. Good. They made it aboard just as the ship's main guns finished clearing the area of hostiles. As the medical bay's doors closed, Cade looked down at Ayla, already hooked to monitors and IVs. When you're better, he said, squeezing her hand, we're going to have a proper date, somewhere with room service and gravity control. Promise. I promise. As the colony ship broke atmosphere, leaving Verides Prime behind, Cade held Ayla's hand and watched the monitors steady. They'd survived. Against all odds, they'd survived. Now came the hard part, saving a queen and quite possibly the galaxy. But first, the date, definitely the date. The battle for the Salathi throne lasted exactly 47 minutes. Cade watched from the observation deck of the Stellar Phoenix as the coup leader's flagship tried, and failed to prevent Ayla's return. The weapons cache coordinates she'd carried in her genetic code had been the key, not just to take back her throne, but to expose the conspiracy that had driven her into exile. 3 months had passed since Verity's prime, 3 months of recovery, planning, and stolen moments between briefings. Ayla's shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a faint silver scar that she traced whenever she thought deeply. Cade had gotten used to watching her do it during their strategy sessions. "Your Majesty," the tactical officer reported, "the last resistance vessel is requesting parley." "Tell them to stand down their weapons and prepare for boarding," Ayla replied, her voice carrying the authority of a born leader. "Any who yield now will face justice, not execution." "Yes, Your Majesty." Cade moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain professional distance while on the bridge. Later, in private, things would be different. But now, he was simply her military advisor, her strategic consultant. The rescued colonial scout who had somehow become central to an interstellar conflict. "It's almost over," he murmured. "This part, yes." She glanced at him, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "But I have a feeling our adventure is just beginning." The bridge crew worked efficiently around them, coordinating the endgame of their campaign. It had been easier than expected. Once word spread that Queen Ayla had the evidence to expose the conspiracy, former allies of the coup had scrambled to switch sides. Justice was swift when delivered from a position of strength. "Your Majesty," communications chimed in, "you're being hailed by the civilian quarters." "Put them through." An elderly Salathi face appeared on the main screen, tears streaming down wrinkled cheeks. "My queen, you've returned to us, the people. We never stopped believing." Ayla's composure cracked slightly. "I never stopped believing in you either, Elder Tarn. Tell the people, tell them all, that the false rule ends today. Tomorrow we begin rebuilding what was torn down." After the connection closed, Cade watched her struggle to maintain the imperial mask. He knew what lay beneath it, the woman who had trusted him enough to share her vulnerable moments, her fears, her hopes. The crew filed out efficiently, used to his occasional commands. When the doors sealed, Ayla finally let herself lean against him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for clearing the bridge. For everything." She looked up at him. "For crashing into my life, for not running when you learned who I was, for holding my hand through medical procedures, for finding me in that jungle and never letting go." "Ayla," he started, but she pressed a finger to his lips. "Marry me," she said simply. Cade blinked. "I thought that was my line." "I'm a queen, I take what I want." Her smile was teasing, but her eyes were serious. "And I want you, Cade Voss, as my partner, my equal, my love. Will you share my burdens and my joys? Will you help me rule with wisdom and love?" Instead of answering immediately, he kissed her. It was a kiss that spoke of jungle rains and crystal formations, of shared danger and quiet moments. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Yes," he said simply, "to all of it, though I should warn you, I've never been a prince." "Good, I don't need a prince, I need a partner." The bridge doors chimed, warning of the crew's return. They straightened, resuming their professional stances, but Cade noticed Ayla's hand finding his beneath the tactical display. "Your Majesty," the tactical officer reported as the crew filed back in, "all enemy vessels have surrendered. The Salathi Empire is once again yours." "No," Ayla corrected gently. "The Salathi Empire belongs to its people. I merely have the honor of serving them." She squeezed Cade's hand. "With help from those I trust." The celebration that followed lasted 3 full cycles. The imperial palace, reclaimed and restored, became a center of joy and renewal. But Cade's favorite moments were the quiet ones, stolen kisses in empty corridors, their private quarters where they could simply be Cade and Ayla instead of the queen and her advisor. On the third night of celebrations, they slipped away from the grand ballroom and made their way to the highest tower of the palace. The Salathi homeworld's 3 moons created a symphony of light across the sky, and the air smelled of crystalline flowers. "I have something for you," Ayla said, producing a small box from the folds of her ceremonial robes. "If it's another medal, I'm running back to the jungle," Cade warned playfully. "Better." Inside the box lay 2 rings, one of traditional Salathi crystal, one of earth diamond, intertwined in a design that seemed to flow like starlight. "I had them made," she explained. "Equal metals, equal stones, united as one." Cade felt his throat tighten. "They're perfect." They exchanged rings under the light of 3 moons, no witnesses except the stars. When they kissed, it tasted like promise and starlight, like coming home and setting sail all at once. You know, Cade said later as they lay together in the Queen's personal chambers, people are going to talk. An alien queen and a human colonial scout. It's like something out of a holovid. Let them talk. Ayla traced patterns on his chest, her rings catching the light. We survived hostile jungles, escaped bounty hunters, and toppled a conspiracy. I think we can handle a little gossip. Together, always together. As the first rays of sun painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Cade held his alien queen close and marveled at the strange paths fate could take. He'd crash-landed on a hostile world looking for survey data. Instead, he'd found love, purpose, and a future beyond anything he'd imagined. Any regrets? Ayla asked sleepily. Just one, he admitted. I'm sorry I didn't crash-land sooner. Her laugh was like silver bells in starlight, and Cade knew that whatever adventures lay ahead, ruling an empire, exploring new worlds, or simply learning to navigate married life with royalty, they would face them together. After all, they'd already survived the impossible. Everything else would be easy by comparison. Well, maybe not easy, but definitely worth it. Outside their windows, the Salathi dawn broke over a world reborn, and two hearts beat as one, perfectly in sync like the binary stars that lit their empire. The jungle of Verity's prime was far behind them now, but its lessons remained. Survival meant more than staying alive. It meant finding something worth living for. And they had found that in each other.